In the course of our relationship and working together, she revealed to me that she herself was in an abusive relationship. And I believe, in fact, I'm certain, she will verify that I gave her the independent source of strength to stand up to the situation and to move out of the situation. Unfortunately, there has been ongoing problems in that relationship, problems in regard to maintenance of her children. And I was actively involved throughout that process, particularly in litigation, in maintenance court, in magistrates court, and in the High Court, to ensure the maintenance of her children. I've set it out in detail in my response. There was an order made in December last year. I participated in it. I was not acting at the time, and I represented her. An order was made that would give her ex-spouse an opportunity to remedy what was a breach of a court order. He did not, and the matter was then set down, and was set down on a very urgent basis, because the children were returning to school, the school fees had not been paid, they faced the risk of being prevented from going to school, and I was asked, because I was so familiar with the history, whether I could possibly attend the matter. The Judge President was approached. He informed me quite categorically and quite clearly that I could have the leave of the day. This is obviously while I was acting. I could have the leave of the day that he had written to the minister, and his words were everything was in order. I do understand it's possible that there was a delay in the letters reaching and or coming back, but I relied on his representation. I firmly believe that I was entitled to do so, and I therefore have made the submission that I've done no wrong and that I've not breached any of the regulations. As it turned out, I didn't physically have to appear, but yes, it is true. I was in chambers to remotely be available to deal with the matter if a hearing was required. It was ultimately not required, and an order, as we were seeking, was made. And I am very comfortable that I did not breach any ethical rules or any other rules of any description.
Thank you very much, Advocate Hack, and thank you, Chief Justice.
Follow-up, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Premier. Is there I thought I heard a voice, was a colleague asking to follow up?
Madonsela.
Yes, Advocate Madonsela, C.
Mr. Hack, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Don't you think your relationship or your relationship with the JP's wife, and the extent to which, and your familiarity with that family, the extent to which you have gone out of your way to make yourself available to assist them in their affairs so much that it had to give rise to a complaint of you taking time out of your acting position to assist them, is such a clumsy affair that it should dissuade us from appointing you as a judge permanently?
The simple, honest answer is no. I believe it was my duty to appear on that day for those two children whose lives were in peril. It was not something that I did lightly. It was not something that was frivolous with respect. It was something that was very important. The Judge President was approached for his leave. I was aware that he required the minister's permission, or consent, sorry. He assured me that he had the minister's consent. Obviously, there is no doubt, or let me reassure you, that should I be given or should I be honored with a permanent appointment, I will be extremely mindful of the divisions between the advocacy and between the bench, and I certainly will not be in any way persuaded to lend any further assistance as a counsel or as an advocate to specifically the Judge President's wife or himself or anybody for that matter. I certainly will honor the fact that I will be bound then to render and exclusively render judicial services.
Is it not unsightly that we as a Judicial Service Commission should appoint a person who is a close family member of a family who are holding judicial positions in one division and add into that family affair?
My response again is a simple no. My knowledge of the appointment of acting judges is that more often than not, those individuals are introduced by a serving member of the judiciary as an individual that might very well be suitable to act as a judge. I don't see any reason why the same principles can't apply and do not apply to a permanent appointment. My association with the specific family does not mean that I can in any way be compromised to be an independent judge doing my independent duties properly and fully without fear of favor. I can't give a better answer than that.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Chief
Follow up,
Justice.
Chief Justice.
Which colleague wants to follow up?
Julius.
And Lamola.
Okay. Maybe before you follow up of his answer, Advocate Herb, did you say that the JP assured you that he had the minister's consent, or did I not hear you correctly?
His exact words were, "Everything is in order." I do not recall him specifically saying he had the minister's consent.
Yes, I was asking because that's what you said. I wanted to be sure that you meant to say those words, or could it be an error? I even wrote them down.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to, okay.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Then I did misspeak. The exact words were, and I remember them very vividly, "Everything is in order. You can go ahead, apply your mind to appearing tomorrow."
Okay. Honorable Malema?
Thank you, CJ. Did you say JP's wife is a judge in the Western Cape?
Yes, that is correct.
When she got appointed, was the JP of the Western Cape?
Yes, he was.
Are you in any way, apart from the relationship you've described, have any relationship with the JP? Like, are you married in his family, or are you brother-in-law, or anything of that sort?
No other relationship whatsoever.
Except that you are friends with the wife who was appointed by this body when the husband was the JP in the Western Cape.
That is quite correct.
Thank you.
Honorable Minister, I propose that you put even questions you were going to put later so that I take you out of the list.
Oh, okay, thank you, CJ. Mine is just a follow-up on this, that everything is in order. Did you inquire with regards to the papers of allowing you to, of revocation, or you just took the JP's word?
I accepted his word. I do believe I said in my representations to the Legal Practices Council that, first of all, it didn't occur to me to question it, and secondly, I do believe it would have been pertinent of me to demand that he must give me a copy of the letter from your good officers confirming that I could go.
Okay. My second question relates to a different matter, aspect. I see you are 65 years of age, and it's almost advanced age, almost towards retirement. Do you think it will be prudent of this body to appoint you at that age. I'm not saying that should be a principle. We do appoint those of your age sometimes, but I'm just asking, do you think it's fair that we do it with regards to you, given the privileges you had as a white male in this country?
Yes, thank you, Honourable Minister. Just again to go back to maths, I'm 64 and 6 months, but yes, I shall be 65 this year. You mention my white privilege, and I must take that up and say immediately, I fully accept and I fully concede that I've had the benefit my entire life of being privileged. There is no doubt about that. I equally believe that it's imperative that the bench change and become more representative and reflective of the demographics of our society. And I fully endorse the fact that there remains an underrepresentation of certain individuals by gender and by race, in other words, specifically black women on the bench. However, the bench should be reflective of other minorities, and more specifically, minorities that are unrepresented in general, and more pertinently, not visible. And that is the LGBTQ plus community, of which I am a member. Now, I accept that my period to serve will be relatively short, but I have come forward as a member of that community. I don't know whether other candidates have come forward on the same basis, and I trust, if not now, then certainly in the future they will. But I believe that I can play the role of being visible and of encouraging other members of the LGBT plus community to come forward. But just on a general note, that's not the defining reason for why I should be considered. I have a work ethic. My record shows that I am productive. I work hard. I'm blessed with good health. I'm very blessed to wish my uncle for his birthday 2 weeks ago when he turned 102. So I'm hopeful that I'm equally blessed with good long genes. And so yes, I understand what you're saying, but I do believe that even if it is for a limited period of time, I can be a role model. I'm not denying that there haven't been prior role models. I can speak only very specifically for the Western Cape. Judge Gerald Jossman actively was visible as a representative of the LGBT community. He very sadly passed away in a motor vehicle accident many years ago. To the best of my knowledge, and I'm fairly certain that there's no open representative of the community currently on the bench. And for that reason, I would make the submission that I am a suitable person, despite the fact that I am a white male, which I readily concede. I have been privileged.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Heck. I also wish you longevity.
That is very kind of you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, CJ.
Can I make a follow-up, CJ, through your indulgence? Can I make a
go ahead, sir.
Thank you, CJ. Just on the last point that Advocate Heck made with regard to being a role model, I came across the Lange versus Mass matter that was resolved in 1998. And when you are a student, there are certain materials that you come through, and when you are in front of somebody that you think probably played that a role model, I think it will be fair for me to ask that question. Just with regard to that matter of the Lange, because it is also noted as part of your contribution to jurisprudence. In that matter, I see there was also an emphasis on the values of the Constitution as provided in Section 1 of the Constitution. And I came across a point where it is said that the De Lange, in the De Lange, it can be seen as, because it was decided in 1998, it dealt with it was a test case in terms of the independence of the judiciary as encapsulated in Section 165 and the role that it can play in terms of giving meaning to those rights that were enshrined in the Constitution. So I would be more interested just to get a sense from you, your appreciation, because it is regarded as a pioneer of the role that the court is played in terms of shaping our jurisprudence. And I just want to quote what the court said in that one. It said, "Our courts will develop a distinctively South African model of separation of powers, one that fits the particular system of government provided for in the Constitution, and that reflects a delicate balancing informed both by the South Africa's history and its new dispensation between the need, on the one hand, to control government by separating powers and enforcing checks and balance, and on the other hand, to avoid diffusing power so completely that the government is unable to take timely measures in the public interest." Can you just share your reflection on that, particularly the role that the court has played in promoting values as enshrined in Section 1 of the Constitution, which captures accountability, transparency, rationality, and the rule of law? Thank you, Chief Justice.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. As a lawyer, I am inclined to apply myself to a specific set of facts. And even as a judge, I have, or as an acting judge at least, one speaks and addresses a specific set of facts. So I am restrained from making extensive, broad and general statements outside from a general set of facts. Same to say that I do agree entirely that, first of all, the Constitution is the highest source of law in this country. Secondly, that both the legislature and the judiciary are bound to honor what is contained in the Constitution. And thirdly, that there should and must be sustained a clear division of power between the legislature and the judiciary. And however, that both should strive to achieve, as you quoted, the furtherance of our own unique South African democracy, which I hold dear, which I do believe is a model for the rest of the world, to be held up and to be respected. And I'm not sure if I'm answering the question directly or adequately, but those just are, in brief, the sentiments that I would share. As I say, I'm reluctant to start talking about broad policy issues because I don't think as a candidate here today, that is my role here today.
No, thank you, Advocate Heck. Thank you, Chief Justice. You have indeed addressed my question because of the pioneering role that you played in that Dilanga matter. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Kaba.
Thank you very much, CJ. Good morning, Advocate Heck.
Good morning, Honourable Commissioner.
Thank you very much. There is an allegation that you did not disclose your membership of the Conservative Student Alliance. Can I get your view on that?
Yes. The Conservative Students Alliance was a club or a society at the University of Cape Town in 1976 to 1979. If I had presumed to say that I was a member of a political organization in the name Conservative Students Alliance, I think I would have elicited a considerable greater degree of criticism, because it was no organization at all. At its best, at its heyday, it might have had 15 or 18 members. I'm happy to address what happened 45 years ago if I need to, but it was nothing more than a banner under which I campaigned for a position on the Student Representative Council for 2 years. I was the sole person that was elected. I hesitate to say this, but I feel I have to be myself. If it was anything, it might have been a grouping of people that met for beers on a regular basis. It certainly was not an intellectual, it certainly was not a political, it certainly was not any organization that can in any way be described as having contributed in any way to any political thinking.
So you want to make us believe that this club was not affiliated in any way or promoted any views of any political party at the time?
That is absolutely correct. I don't want to delay proceedings, and again, I can give a long, protracted explanation of my role at the University of Cape Town at that period of time. So very briefly, in 1976, the apartheid regime released physical violence into the townships in the form of the police and the military. On the 16th of June, 1976, there was a massacre in Soweto. We all know that day because we remember it every day. On the University of Cape Town, they were running battles between the police and a small number of students who were actively involved, who committed themselves to close the university down. There were burning tires on the highway, and there were police with live ammunition on campus. I will try to be brief. As a schoolboy, I was bullied. I had experienced physical violence. I abhor violence. I was extremely concerned that we were heading into an escalation of violence. There were two schools of thought at the time. One was liberation before education. The other one was education for liberation. I followed the latter view. I decided to stand for the SRC, to promote that view. The student body, the white privileged student body as it was in 1976, was highly apathetic, was not politically involved or politically motivated, except for a very small group of people. To get attention, I needed to be controversial. I needed to get attention, and I chose the word conservative student allowance rather than moderate student allowance or whatever the case may be. It was not representative of any political party. It was not representative of any political philosophy. It was simply to say, please, let's apply our minds, let's apply our thoughts, let's apply our words to achieve liberation. And let's try as far as possible to avoid violence. I acknowledge and I respect that those who took up arms played a vital role to having achieved ultimately liberation. But to also say that in 1976, the system was cracking. There was already significant political pressure. There was the boycotts. There was already the hope, the bit of light at the end of the tunnel that possibly a negotiated settlement could be achieved, which was ultimately achieved. That was my position. That's why I was a party to what was at that stage student politics.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Advocate.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Matolo Dlepo.
Okay, thank you, CJ. Good morning, Advocate Hack.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Okay, you are well aware that transformation of the legal profession is still far behind other sectors, and the Western Cape being still the West is still not transformed, according to the study that we did. But what I wanted you to share with us is, as an advocate, what initiatives did you have, or what role did you play in trying to empower black females or white females in the advocacy? Or, I mean, just share with us what initiatives do you take to do that?
Yes, thank you. First of all, the person who nominated me, Mr. Apollos, was an attorney who briefed me over many years, and he asked to do pupillage with me when he decided to come to the bar. I had another pupil who was a black male who worked with me. My door was always open, and I practically did assist on a regular basis to mentor and to guide fellow advocates, young, inexperienced advocates at that particular time. I also, as is borne out in the 3 letters of support, which I trust have been placed before the commissioners, I have done whatever I could to provide access to justice. I was pertinently aware of the cost of litigation when I started my career, because I had a significant debt. And when I say my career, my first career in the commercial world. And I provided access to justice, particularly to the marginalized members of society. And you would have seen that I particularly and pertinently assisted with the advancement of women through rugby at the University of the Western Cape, to provide and assist with setting up structures, bursaries, and legal advice for them. And I, again, as a member of the disadvantaged community and oppressed community, and a community that remains on the fringes despite the Constitution. The Constitution provides, it guarantees that there can't be discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation. But LGBTILQ is a vast spectrum of people. and they remain unidentified. And I made myself available to assist anybody who particularly came from that community, and particularly women. You would have seen the letter from the attorney, Ms. Hlophe, that I, over a considerable number of years, assisted particularly her firm, who consist only of women, and also her clients in the furtherance of their rights and promoting their interests and ensuring their equality in terms of the Constitution. And again, I'm sorry to use a colloquial term, but what you see is what you get. I'm trying as best as I can be. I'm not fabricating. The series of judgments and letters show this is not some recent aberration. This is something I've done from the day that I entered to the profession.
Okay, thank you. A follow-up question. I appreciate what you have done in your personal capacity, but what do you think can be done more to fast-track this transformation from your point of view, especially in the Western Cape?
Yes. Thank you again. I'm not a social influencer. I can't, it is not within my nature to turn to Instagram and make statements and try to educate. I have difficulty with that. It's against my it's not against my nature. I don't have the ability to do it. I'm not an activist in that sense. I have played my role, and I will play my role as a jurist. That's my strong point, my ability to think, my ability to argue, and my ability, I trust and I hope, to persuade, and then ultimately, if I'm honored to be afforded a position as a judge, to deliver judgments that are appropriate. But how do we change? How do we solve the problem? I'm aware, and I'm fairly sure that all members of this Honourable Commission will be aware that there was a protest demonstration outside the Constitutional Court 2 days ago by an amalgamation of LGBT communities and organizations demonstrating and addressing the fact that there had been a series of violent crimes against the LGBT community, at least 8 in the last 2 months, where people were killed. Hate crimes as a result of the fact that they did not fit into a heteronormative image. I don't want to be perceived to be lecturing. I know everybody knows and understands what I'm talking about, but it's just to emphasize that teenager at school, that boy at school who is dating a girl who is completely comfortable with his own sexuality, but nevertheless is effeminate, does not fit into society's norms of how you should behave. It's that person that also needs to be made visible. And so I can only but say, particularly in the Western Cape, where I absolutely agree with you, there is a single need of further transformation, particularly for the enhancement of black women and the presence of black women on the bench. It's essential. At the same time, there is a need for a presence of people who are in the LGBT community. It is unfortunate that I am a white man that has come forward, as I said earlier. But that is something that society needs. They're visible in art. They're visible in the theatre. They are not visible in the professions. They are not visible in the government. They are not visible in the judiciary, and they should be. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, CJ, and thank you, Advocate.
Thank you, ma'am. Honorable Nyambi.
Thank you, CJ. Morning, Advocate Hank.
Good morning, Commissioner.
One issue, probably it's not giving you a good image about yourself. The from the Cape Bar, the issue of when you responded to the questionnaire, you say it's of public record that you are acquitted for the shot you fired outside a member of parliament home, but you do not disclose that you were charged in respect of the leader of the opposition, Colin. So if you can share with us what's the story here? Because it's like there's something that you responded, but when we go through what they are highlighting to us is giving a different picture. Probably clarify us.
Yes, certainly. Again, I must stress we are talking about 42 years ago, and it certainly was at the time headline news for a number of months in the newspapers, and I forget that I'm a little bit older than many people that are walking around today who would not have seen those newspaper reports. I was on the SRC. I was telephoned one day, shortly a week before Easter, during the week prior to Easter, and I was asked if this person asked if he could meet me. He represents a student bodies in America, and they've seen what I'm doing on campus and they want to meet. And I met him. That very night, first time I'd ever met Arnold van der Westhuizen, the shots were fired through the door of the apartment of Mr. Eglin. I had no role to play whatsoever. I was sitting in my car up on the road. I had no knowledge that he intended to do this. I had no participation, planning, or in any way, any involvement in it. It is the most classic example of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. He and his cohort, a certain Mr. Beelders, had been conducting a reign of terror in the Western Cape at that particular point in time, under the name Scorpio. I had never met them. I had no knowledge of them. I had no interest in them. I had no affiliation with them, and I did not in any way conspire with them or wish to be involved with them. But I was answering a telephone call, and I went and I joined this person for a few drinks, and this happened when we were on our way home. There was considerable pressure at the time to make it clear that attempts were being made to address this particular problem. Again, I don't want to delay time, but those two individuals were specifically targeting the Jewish community. And there was a lot of pressure on the state to have to do something because they could not catch these individuals. They were caught that night or the following morning, because I went the very next morning to somebody, in fact on the way home, to say, you will not believe what has just happened to me. That person reported it to the police, and I was arrested. I was on bail. Then my bail was removed because the prosecuting authority believed that it was necessary to do everything they possibly could to try to implicate me in the process. I went through a complete trial. I gave my evidence over a number of days in great detail, saying what I've exactly said now. I had no role to play. I did not participate with it, and I was acquitted of all charges. The fact that it happened to be the leader of the opposition at the time, I don't think was material to these people, but I certainly do not want to talk for them. I think it was because he was Jewish. I think that's why he was targeted. But it was most certainly not anything that I wished to, did play a role in. But it has been a shadow over my life. I did say earlier, I know what legal costs are because it cost me a lot of money. I left university with a very substantial loan of people that I had to repay for legal fees, and it derailed my plans to finish my LLB degree at the time. And without wanting to, again, be in any way emotional, I experienced, one, a jail cell door shutting in my face, two, a person on the 4th or 5th floor of a building in Barrack Street with a considerable amount of rank pointing to a book and saying to me, "Mr. Hack, you are going to hang. What? You better talk." And I had nothing to talk because I had no role to play in this. And it gave me a further realization of the struggle and how so many people had suffered in that typical similar environment. But there was one big difference. Those people were there because they believed in something. They were there for a reason. I was there, wrong place, wrong time.
Thank you, Mr. Heck. Thank you, CJ.
May I follow up, CJ?
Please follow up, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Advocate. Following the incident that my colleague mentioned, did you take membership of the Students' Moderate Alliance? If yes, who were the main funders of this alliance?
Sorry, you're talking about a specific other organization, Moderate Alliance, or you're talking about my organization, the CSA?
Yes, there was CSA, and there was later an organization called Students' Moderate Alliance.
I had no role.
You
I
had
don't
no
know
role
them.
in that.
I don't know them.
So you did not take up membership in that organization?
No.
Thank you so much.
No.
Thanks.
Professor?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Would you mind to share your judicial philosophy with me?
Goodness. Dispense justice. Again, it's simplistic, but it is what it is. Look after the vulnerable. Look after the weak, the disadvantaged. My judgments show, particularly that I take a strong point about financial disadvantage. It's all very well to talk about the right to vote, the right to equality, and the right not to be discriminated against, but one of the single biggest problems, if not the biggest problem, that besets South Africa is poverty, is the lack of opportunities. I read, coincidentally, earlier this week, somebody saying, an overseas influencer, probably a youngster, but so be it, that privilege is not about having opportunities. Privilege is about not having obstacles in your way. And the biggest obstacle in the way of the determination of individuals in this country is poverty. And so, look after the vulnerable, look after the dispossessed, look after the less advantaged in society as far as you possibly can by applying the law, of course.
And your understanding of the rule of law?
That it's paramount, that it is the basis upon which modern civilization rests and survives, and that is, first of all, upholding the fundamental principles of the Constitution and all such laws that are legislatively passed and all created in any other manner as long as they are consistent with the Constitution.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Prof. Commissioner Tsepe?
Thank you, CJ. Good morning, Advocate. I am actually covered, CJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Honorable Singh?
Thank you very much, Chief Justice, and good morning. Chief Justice, my two questions have been covered, but I thought I must just respond, and perhaps for the record, on an issue because Judge Hlophe has been the subject of this interview. And I was on the JSC in 2014, October 2014, together with the politicians like Commissioner Didiza Matseka, Commissioner Malema himself, Commissioner Schmidt, when she appeared before the JSC in October 2014. And she was recommended by this JSC for appointment, and she was subsequently appointed by President Zuma at that time, I think on the 11th of December, to start on January 1, 2015. At the time when she appeared before us, she was not, according to my knowledge, married to Judge Hlophe. The marriage only took place subsequently from records in April 2015. So I just wanted to clear that this JSC did not appoint her when Judge Hlophe was the JP and when she was married to him at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Breitenbach.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, Mr. Hack.
Good morning, Commissioner. Are you with us remotely?
I'm sorry, yes, I am, and my connectivity is not great, so I'm not switching the camera on. You were arrested for the attack on Colin Eglin's home. You rightly point out that you were acquitted. However, were you a member of Scorpio?
No, I was not.
When you were asked to meet with these people, did you check on them? Did you find out who they were, what they stood for, before you met with them?
Not at all, and I met only with the one, Arnold van der Westhuizen. Please do remember again, this was 1979. We do not have the advantage of the internet. I would have.
Yeah, I'm 2 years old as you are, Mr. Heck, so I understand 1979 very well.
I received the phone call that morning. I met him that evening at a pub.
Okay. So you kind of downplay the Conservative Students Association and make it out to be the small little group of beer-swilling students. In fact, it was a semi-counter for NUSAS at the time. It was very pro-white, very pro-National Party, very pro-establishment. Do you differ from that?
Yes, I do.
I see. You say that you abhor violence, yet you align yourself with people of that nature.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I most certainly do not align myself at all with people of that nature. If you're suggesting Scorpio.
Okay. And just as a matter of interest, Colin Eglin was not Jewish.
Oh, I apologize. I believed he was.
So part of the duties of this body, the JSC, is to protect the independence, the impartiality and the effectiveness of the courts. Should the situation arise where a judge who has been found guilty of gross misconduct continue to perform the duties of a judge notwithstanding such a finding, would this, in your view, not of necessity weaken the legitimacy of the bench and thus eroding its independence and its effectiveness?
I'm really not prepared to enter into that area. I do not believe it's my role to give any opinion in that regard. Again, if I'm honored to be appointed, I will apply my mind to whatever facts come before me.
I'm not asking you about the Western Cape Division of the High Court, Mr. Hack.
I understand, but I'm not...
In general, you applied for a position. You don't have a view.
No, with greatest respect, your question cannot but be in relation to the Western Cape situation. I mean, it's a very unusual situation to suggest this could happen on any kind of a regular basis. And I have again, must assert the fact that I don't believe it's appropriate for me to make any comment.
Thank you. Believe it or not, you answered the question.
Thank you.
CJ, is Dodov here? Can I make a follow-up, please?
Yes, sir.
Advocate Heck, do you believe or subscribe to a view that all of us, we write our own histories?
We
write our own histories.
Right.
With our conduct, how we behave, what we do. We write our own history. Do you believe in that?
We live our lives. If that's what you mean, then I would agree with you.
I mean, what we do today will follow us in the future. That is what I mean.
Yes, I certainly agree with that.
But do you also believe that we are the authors of our own misfortunes?
Yes.
Good. If you believe that, do you know Mr. Yap Mare, the late Mr. Yap Mare of the Hersterte National Party?
Yes, I recall.
Which was the splinter group from the National Party.
Yes, I recall.
If you remember, he succeeded Mr. Albert Herzog, who was the son to Mr. Barry Herzog, who was the Prime Minister of South Africa.
Yes, I do recall that.
Did you ever meet him?
Never.
In your life, Mr. Yap Mare?
No, I never met him.
Okay. The information that I have, it may be not completely correct, is that when I read books about NUSAS, this conservative student body was an affiliate to the HNP. Do you believe that?
It's absolutely not correct.
Okay, thank you.
Factually not correct.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Can I make a follow-up, Chief Justice?
Thank you, sir. Yes, Honorable Malema.
Can you just describe how this student organization was constituted?
It was registered with the university as a student.
No, let's take it from where it started. How does it start?
I do believe it would have been in the latter part of 1979, as 76, when I chose to make myself available as a candidate for the Students' Representative Council. And I realized I couldn't, without some appearance of backing, get any interest from the electorate. And so I personally created the name, and I think it was simply a question of filling in a form, and there you were and handed it in at the administration at UCT, and you were a student society.
So in the comfort of your own room, you decided, I'm going to contest the SRC elections, but I will need an organization to do so.
Yes.
Then you formed an organization.
Insofar as it could be described as an organization, I created an entity.
It was your own child.
Yes.
You wrote its own constitution. Did they have a constitution?
I believe we must have had, but it would have been very fundamental, primarily to support student representative council elections.
Yes, and then you recruited people into it.
It was already a circle of people that would sit generally and talk about what was happening on campus.
Yeah, but did they have members?
As I say, there were members, yes, but it never reached formal structure.
So, after having these members, you never sought some relationship with any of the political formations at the time?
No.
Were you ever addressed by anyone from the political formations at the time? Maybe during your campaign for endorsement or anything of that
There
sort?
was a dinner, I remember, and it was addressed by the then ambassador to the United Nations, if I remember. South African ambassador to the United Nations, I can't think of his name at the moment.
He was in the National Party?
Well, he would have been an appointee of the government at the time, but he was at the United Nations.
I'm trying to establish where this confusion comes from. Perhaps someone from one of the political formations at the time came or endorsed you, or some of your members would have belonged to a political formation outside that student formation, and perhaps that linked to or creating this linkage which you don't know about?
I understand. Yes, that is very probably correct. There were a group of people, and they were a broad spectrum of people. They didn't all necessarily share my views.
Thank you, CJ.
CJ, can I make a follow-up?
CJ, follow-up, Makwanisha.
Yes, Honorable Magwanisha.
Advocate Heck, what was the organizing philosophy of this organization? And
I do apologize, I couldn't hear you.
What was the organizing philosophy of this organization?
It was to address the manner in which the University of Cape Town should respond to the oppression that was taking place at the time on campus. And as I say, it was a question of following the course of close the university down until such time as there has been liberation, or keep the university open, and in a certain sense, there the word conservative came in, conserve the university and focus on your education so that you can contribute in due course to liberation.
A follow-up?
Was it open to all races?
Yes.
Thank you, CJ.
But there's a colleague who said follow-up where I couldn't make out who it was.
It's Xaba.
And myself,
Yes,
Chief Justice Muima.
Yes. You see, at the time, politics was, in a way, for a lack of a better word, contested by the conservatives and the liberals. Do you agree with me?
National politics.
Yes, national politics.
Yes. It was the governing party and the Progressive Party at the time.
And then as a founder member of this organization or club, you saw it fit to name it a conservative club.
It was very unfortunate. It was a very unfortunate choice. I did not in any way align myself with the state, the government, or the National Party.
And you say that you chose education for liberation to contradict education now and liberation later. And you add that that was not a political philosophy. Did I get you right?
Well, I'm not too sure if I've been understood. I'm not suggesting that that's not a philosophy which is of a political nature. It's a political philosophy. Yes, it is. I think the question earlier was this organized? Was the CNS, the Students' Conservative Alliance, an organization? I said absolutely not.
Thank you so much, CJ. Thank you very much, Advocate.
Was it you, Honorable Muima, who wanted to follow up?
Yes, Chief Justice.
Go ahead, sir.
Just in terms of student politics formation, so in the 70s, 80s, NUSAS was a national federation of SRCs, and the form that it took, it was a bit of progressive. But of course, because of the limited number of black students, particularly on those white campuses, SAS was born, and it evolved into Azaso and SANSCO, and in 1991, NUSAS and SANSCO united to form SASCO. I think the point that we just wanted I just want to bounce with you is that, look, many progressive and liberal white students were organized under NUSAS. So I just want to get a sense in terms of your posture. Were you opposed to the progressive nature of NUSAS? Because the Cape Bar Society says that your views evolved from a bit of conservative and in your later years of studies to being progressive. Is that the reflection of your comment?
No, it is not. I learned more. I came to understand better, but my views did not change. I was committed to democracy. When I joined the SRC in 1976, I was committed to universal democracy, freedom. I did not understand the struggle. I did not appreciate what the greater majority of the country had endured and had gone through. And I did use the words, my views developed, but they developed into simply a better appreciation. As we are spending time on this, to give you an example, while I was acting and at coffee with the judge president, he spoke about not being allowed to be in a white area after whatever it was, 5 o'clock. And it did hit me for the first time that on that particular point, I had never appreciated and understood.
We're coming out of those JSC interviews, yet another candidate that the Western Cape Judge, President John Hlophe, elects not to interview because he's a friend. Well, I suppose nothing wrong with that. What if the judge is a sociable person? But Advocate Brian Hack has been in practice since 1995 and has acted as a judge at the Western Cape High Court. He says he's a white man who has enjoyed privilege throughout his life, but values his representation of the LGBTQI community in this space. Alan Windy asking about the system of separation of powers. The Justice Minister asking whether it would be prudent for the JSC to appoint him at 65 and if this wouldn't be working against the transformation prerogative. Also, when he was a student at the University of Cape Town, he was one of the founders of an organization, a questionable organization called the Conservative Student Alliance. Asked about this too, and then Glenys Breitenbach came in and was able to do the thing that she does of unearthing things that aren't necessarily known and rattled the candidate a bit, but we'll go back to that later on here on the show. But on to the